Welcome back to our series on poetry. One of the curious things about this time when COVID-19 has everyone obsessed is the difference between people who really see no effects from this entire plague that's come upon the country. That's a little bit the case here in Wyoming, where we've had very few deaths and still under 400 cases statewide since the beginning of it. For many of us here, and I think elsewhere in the country, the suffering, the intense suffering, particularly of those who have lost loved ones and have not been able to be at the side of their loved ones as they pass on, has been terrible and devastating. Whole cities have been plagued with this. Certainly our son in New York City has seen the effects of it much more than we have here in Wyoming. But I'm led today to think of a poem by W.H. Auden, written in the late 30s. It's called Musée de Beaux, one of his more famous poems, and it refers, as we'll see in just a minute, to a painting by Pieter Bruegel called Landscape with the Fall of Icarus. So first the poem, and then we'll take a glance at the painting and a few remarks about what Auden is getting at with the whole emphasis of the poem. So here's the poem, Musée de Beaux by W.H. Auden. About suffering, they were never wrong, the old masters. How well they understood its human position. How it takes place while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. How, when the aged are reverently, passionately waiting for the miraculous birth, there always must be children who did not specially want it to happen, skating on a pond at the edge of the wood. They never forgot that even the dreadful martyrdom must run its course anyhow in a corner, some untidy spot where the dogs go on with their doggy life and the torturer's horse scratches its innocent behind on a tree. In Bruegel's Icarus, for instance, how everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. The plowman may have heard the splash, the forsaken cry, but for him it was not an important failure. The sun shone, as it had to, on the white legs disappearing into the green water, and the expensive, delicate ship that must have seen something amazing, a boy falling out of the sky, had somewhere to get to, and sailed calmly on. Auden's poem, I think, is particularly pertinent when you think of those who are perishing of this disease while someone else is eating or opening a window or just walking dully along. The disparity between the suffering of some and the innocent enjoyments of others. I always particularly like the imagination of Auden when he pictures the torturer's horse scratching its innocent behind on a tree. A very Wyoming image, if I might say so. But martyrdoms run their course while everything else goes on as it usually does. Children are born. Other children don't particularly want that birth because it's going to take away attention from them. We all know these things, but somehow in the moment of suffering, the whole of the universe seems focused on that one sufferer and that one thing happening. But Bruegel's Icarus, and let's look at that painting for a minute. You notice what Auden is saying about it. Everything turns away quite leisurely from the disaster. What's the disaster? This is the story of Daedalus and Icarus, how they made themselves waxen wings to escape from the island where they were held prisoner. And Icarus, as you recall, flew too close to the sun, and the sun melted the wax on his wings, and he plummeted to his death in the ocean, much to the dismay of his father, the great craftsman and artist, Daedalus. Virgil has this scene depicted on the door of the Sibyl's domain in Italy, where Aeneas goes and sees this particular image incomplete because Daedalus was so moved by sorrow that he couldn't finish depicting the fall of Icarus. But notice how inconspicuous they are in the painting. Down there in the lower right, those legs that seem almost like a swimmer's disappearing into the water. And Bruegel is showing us the plowman in the foreground, the ship that had somewhere to get to and sailed calmly on. So I think it's a bracing reminder, full of a kind of humor, dark wit, I suppose, that when we think we are at the very center of things elsewhere, life goes on as it must. This form of this is not obviously a sonnet, but it has the feel of a sonnet, where the whole first part of the poem sets up the situation, and then the second part answers it by turning to Bruegel and depicting Icarus falling into the sea as our final image of that sort of unexpected and really unrecorded suffering of those who endure so much while the rest of us are spared.